Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show with me, Lewis Sale, joined by our very unreliable Mr. Gareth Walker. How are you doing, sir? You well, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. We've, the duo back together. We're nice doing a little whistle-stop tour of what's happened across the weekend because the others have failed fitness test, shall we say, Gaz. We're just not up to scratch, have they? Just after the international break and the first weekend, we get a little bit giddy. We're just not joining us tonight, but yeah, all good, mate, all good. Obviously, we'll touching across the teams, but me and Gaz are going to bring you a bit of a quick reflection on everything that's happened across the weekend. We'll keep it nice and tight for you all to enjoy the rest of your evening. But obviously, just to touch on, obviously, Leeds United getting a win under the floodlights Friday night against West Ham in, what was a massive victory for the Whites there. And obviously, we'll be touching on Gaz's own very own Bradford City, who's good form, just keeps on doing what they're doing, ploughing on and keeping at the top end of the table in League One. Huddersfield Town suffering, unfortunately, a disappointing defeat at the hands of Wycombe Wanderers. And obviously, we'll be touching on some of that reaction and discussing, a few things maybe about what happened during that game and some of the stuff potentially off the field as well, with some of the fans not particularly taking a liking to Lee Grant at the moment, which is raising a few eyebrows. And obviously, just across non-league with FC Halifax Town flying a flag in the National League with a really solid draw at home to York City, and then just looking further down the pyramid as well at some significant results. So do get in touch with ourselves. Don't forget we're on Facebook, YouTube and X. West Yorkshire Football, do search for us, get your comments in. We'd always like to get you involved in the conversation, but like I say, we'll be keeping it nice and tight, so don't miss out. And if you are watching us on replay, do keep your comments in. I know that obviously we do check the comments and we react as much as we can. I know a few of us have got a few opinions, haven't we, between us, Gaz, at the moment, between our groups. And obviously, before we kick into this, to last weekend's action, we're all getting together tomorrow night, aren't we, mate, for the big one, City against Lincoln City. We've got to show Chris what Shocks is all about, haven't we, mate?
I'm outnumbered though, aren't I? You're all going in Lincoln end apart, obviously me. I'm where I am. Yeah, you lot are all going at Lincoln end, but Chris needed someone to go with, didn't he? And you've all jumped on. Well, not all of you, but 3 or 4 of you have obliged, haven't you? Tomorrow night, so it's a beer for us somewhere on North Parade, and then a bit of shawarma and up to Valley Parade, isn't it, tomorrow?
Sounds absolute bliss, doesn't it? We'll be one of those people that'll be on each other's phones and going, "Oh, you're there, wave at us" and stuff. So we'll be doing that. But yeah, we've got to try and keep Chris a bit of company, haven't we? But it's should be a good one. I think we're all looking forward to it. I mean, how do you feel about it, Gaz? Just before we get into what happened at the weekend, is it one that it seems to be a really good tie on paper, doesn't it, between both sides up at the right end of the table at the moment?
It is. I think personally, I'd have rather played them the other week when the game were called off on the Saturday. Variety of reasons. Personally, selfishly, Saturdays are a lot easier for me. But just from a team perspective, we seem to have a fair few injuries at the moment, which we probably didn't have 2-3 weeks ago when the game should have been played. We've drawn. I think we've drawn our last 3 games in the league now. Obviously, we're still knocking it around up near the top of the league. I think we're 3rd. We go top. We will go top if we win tomorrow night. But yeah, form was just a little bit better a few weeks ago, and we didn't have the injuries that we seem to have picked up over the last fortnight. Hopefully, some of those might be back tomorrow night. If they're not, then it could be a case of waiting. They might not do it because it's obviously the FA Cup next Saturday. So they might, if they don't play tomorrow night, it might be a case of leaving them, giving them an extra 10 days and just thinking we won't risk them tomorrow night and have them back in 10 days' time for the Burton League game, which is a week on Saturday. But you got to be confident with our home record. Our home record's really good, touch wood. And it should be a bit of a ding-dong affair tomorrow night because Lincoln are up there as well. I don't know what their injury situation's like. They lost at Leyton Orient on Saturday. But 2 teams that think will watch the game in a similar fashion. They don't want to dominate the ball. They want the other team to have the ball. So it could be an interesting situation tomorrow night and see who comes out on top.
In terms of obviously the recent form, speak about yourselves, guys. Obviously, focus on Bradford City. 1-1 draw against Stevenage. Obviously, I think some of the first points they've dropped at home for the first time this season as well. Obviously, watching through the highlights, obviously you got off to a decent enough start, deflected shot going in, and Stevenage getting a kind of a rebound, which was a decent strike as well. But it's one that you probably look on paper, and it's not a bad result, is it? I don't think there were much in it between both teams. But what was your assessment of it, Gaz, from a Bradford City perspective?
I've been a little bit surprised. I think Simon Parker's mentioned in the TNA, and I think Graham Alexander mentioned afterwards that we were off it, not off it, but not quite at it like we have been before on Saturday. I thought we did all right on Saturday, to be honest with you, considering the players we have out and considering the home record that Stevenage have. You bob on. Stevenage had won every home game prior to Saturday. I think they'd only conceded one goal as well. So to go there and score first 3 minutes, take the lead, and then come away with a point is a good result on paper. I thought in the second half we were the better side. There were only one team going to go on. There were always going to be a reaction from Stevenage, and for the rest of the first half, I thought they were probably the more likely. It's a great finish from their lad on the volley, like you say. A rebounded shot comes out to him, and he hits it first time into the corner from the edge of the box. You can't do a lot about that. But yeah, second half, I thought we were the more likely, and although happy with the draw, you're kind of thinking we could have won it. So I'm not sure I concur that we were off it a little bit. Graham Alexander and Simon Parker probably know better than me, but I'm quite happy with a point there, considering their home record. It's just the fact that we've now done three draws in a row. We drew at Rotherham away, and then we lost our 100% home record when Barnsley took a point from us 10 days ago at Valley Parade. We'd won every home game before that, and then we've drawn again at Stevenage. But they're not bad results when you look at them in isolation. It's just a case of probably wanting to get back to winning ways tomorrow night before we break for the Cup on Saturday.
And it's difficult to kind of predict where Alexander's going with his starting 11 at the moment. He seems to be shuffling the pack a little bit, doesn't he, Gaz? And he's not scared to also kind of deal a different set of cards, is he, almost on the hour mark? And obviously on Saturday, a couple of players being bought off after 56 minutes. So he's prepared to take, the bull by the horn, so to speak, and make that first change to affect the game, which, is a positive as well.
Yeah, it's very proactive. He's talked quite openly how he doesn't necessarily worry about the other team as much. It's more what we can do and how we can affect that, put input our game, our tactics on the game, and what we can do to win the game. He's very proactive, very positive. He's also openly said he's learnt from last year, where he didn't rotate as much as he probably should have done at the start of the season. Probably something he'd done throughout his whole career, where he as manager, where he stuck with a winning team. If you're doing well, you stick with the team. And he said he did that because of how he was as a player. And when you were in performing last year, he did that. And we picked up a lot of injuries at the start of the season. So he's taken a new approach this season. And he has been rotating to try and protect players from injury and stop them picking up muscle strains or feeling twinges or whatever. And touch so far, he says there is 100% belief in every member in the squad that they can come in and do a job. He feels the squad's strong enough to do that. And then on top of that, like I said, I kind of said at the start, we have picked up a few injuries of late. So the fact that he's been rotating in order to stop the injuries, and then we've kind of like picked up a few little niggles, has kind of forced him to go down a road of playing players that might not necessarily have otherwise played. The two that were a shock to not be in the 18 at all on Saturday were Sarcevic and Humphreys, who have both said, well, Sarcevic started the season pretty well, maybe slow right at the start, but was really sort of getting into his stride and looking the player he was last year. And Humphreys, after a slow start in the last couple of games, obviously picked up goals against Grimsby in the Virtue Motors and against Barnsley in the league. So it was disappointing to see them missing out on Saturday. Graham Alexander said afterwards that neither of them he doesn't think are serious, but neither of them could train on Friday, which was why they didn't go down to play on Saturday. Humphreys had done a fitness test in order to train and had failed that, and then Sarcevic had pulled out after 2 or 3 minutes of training on Friday. But they're obviously not a million miles away, and I don't think most of the injuries are, to be honest. I don't think any of the injuries are too serious. I think that the ones that are going to be longer are probably Aidan Baldwin and Curtis Tilt, who we've known about for a while. But it would be good to, like I said, get back to winning ways tomorrow night. And it would be good to be able to rotate a little bit with players who were in a very tough physical game on Saturday. Obviously, the way Stevenage plays very physical, and it will have taken a lot out of the players on Saturday. So if we can get a couple back tomorrow night, it'd be good.
And also, Gaz, let's put this into perspective. I know obviously say some people have had mixed reactions of the weekend, but you've had one defeat in the league. That's the least amount of defeats for any other team in the League One. Obviously, you suffered the defeat in the Carabao in the Carabao Cup, which granted against Premier League opposition. As a Bradford City fan, you're still slightly pinching yourselves, even though you're still pessimistically optimistic, so to speak, of Bradford City and the chances. But you'd have taken this, wouldn't you? After 13 games, one defeat, third in the league, just on goal difference, you'd have snapped your hands off at this, wouldn't you, at the moment, mate?
100%. You know me, Lou. I look on the dark side of things normally anyway, but I've said right from the start, like when you get promoted, your first job is to stay up in the division you've gone into. And that was my hope at the start of the season. Obviously, as we spoke to Brownie about this on the pod last week, Brownie asked the question about whether expectations change because of the way we've started, and they probably do. But I'm very wary of getting too carried away and then there being a bad reaction when, because I'm going to say when, not if, we will go on a bad run at some point. We're bound to. And I hope that we remember where we were 18 months ago. I remember what expectations were at the start of this season. But the longer this goes on, you've just got to enjoy it. You've got to roll with it. And nobody's wanting to play us at the moment because of the style of play that we have and the way that the fans are getting behind the team. And because of the home record. Like you said, we've lost one in the league. That was Doncaster away, who for the previous 10 years, we'd always had a good record against Donny, but over the last 2 or 3, they seem to have got the wool over us. They seem to be a bit of a bogey team for us, and they turned us over at their place. And obviously, like you said, the Newcastle game, but Newcastle showed us utmost respect in that game, put out probably near enough their first 11 and played us off the park that night. So the league form's good, the home form's good, and everybody's just got to enjoy it and be happy and see how far we can go without getting too disappointed if we do tail off a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on, mate. So just obviously wrap up a little bit on Bradford City. You've obviously got Lincoln, like we mentioned, tomorrow night, which we're hoping to do a little bit of a video or some kind of video diary of us wherever we may be of that game. And then obviously at the weekend, you've got Cheltenham away, who, have had a difficult start to the season, kind of, obviously with where they've been. But how do you see that potentially going? Obviously, like I say, Cheltenham in the FA Cup, it's potential banana skin, but is it one of those where, and that's my dog, who has an opinion brilliant on that game. How do you see that one going? Obviously, I know Michael Flynn was very difficult start to the season, but it's one you probably want to do well in the FA Cup and get a good trophy run. Yeah,
I mean, Graham Alexander talks about playing the team in each league game, in each game, whether it be league or cup. He doesn't really talk about prioritising the league over the cup games. Now, whether that'll change because of our start in the league, I don't know. Cheltenham have obviously had a bit of an uplift since Steve Cottrell went in there. I think there'll be a totally different proposition to what they would have been a month or so back. He seems to have got them going a little bit, whether it's just a new manager bounce or whether it can be more for them. I don't know. They've moved out of the relegation zone now. It'll also come down to not just how we approach it. Like I say, I think we'll approach it quite like we would any other game, the way Alexander talks, but how they approach it as well. How do they see it in their priorities? Do they need to focus on the league to move a little bit further away from the drop zone, or are they going to go full tilt at it as well? It is a banana skin, and obviously, like I always think with the first round of the cup, you just want to be at home, so it's a little bit disappointing that we've got a long trip down to Cheltenham, but what'll be will be, and I certainly look at it as the priority is the league, but I don't know if Alexander will look at it the same way.
Fab. So that obviously rounds up Bradford City. Don't forget, we'll try and keep you everything that's all things Bradford City related, and like I say, we're there tomorrow night between us all. Just to finally a bit of a prediction on tomorrow night, Gaz. How do you see it going? I know you mentioned earlier you think it's going to be a difficult one because both teams don't really like having possession, like to catch each other on the counter attack. How would you see it going between you and Lincoln, mate?
You lot are terrible, aren't you? You always do this. You always ask for a prediction. And like, I just don't, I've never, ever, I say it every week, I've never seen the point in predictions because if you...
No, you're right. You're right. No, it's right. I get you.
You go to the bookies and make a fortune. But like I say, I don't think we should be looking at it fearful. we have got players out, and we are good at home. So, but we are good at home, and we're not particularly. I know, although we've drawn the last three, like I said, that we can go top if we win tomorrow night. I would probably. I'd like to think we'll go and try and win the game. We will, because of the way Alexander approaches every game. I hope we can win it, but I don't think a draw is an absolute disaster. It'd be more of a disappointment drawing the game, given that it would be 4 straight draws, than it would be looking at the game in isolation and seeing where Lincoln are in the league. And you probably, like we said about the Stevenage and the Barnsley games, that they're not in isolation. Draws against those teams aren't bad. Lincoln would be the same tomorrow night. But the fact that we've drawn 3 in a row, we probably want to be looking at trying to bounce back at home and win the game before we break for the cup.
Absolutely fair, mate. I will not put you on the spot ever again. Fantastic. So that rounds Bradford City up. So we'll just move on to Leeds United. So in the Premier League, obviously they played Friday night under the lights against West Ham, Gaz. And obviously the lads have done a reaction video, so do go check that out on our YouTube channel and social media platforms. So obviously, just to quickly run through Leeds United, listen, it's been a good start, hasn't it? Let's be absolutely honest. We know that there's a little bit of furore when Leeds United don't always win every game between the fan base, and I still think, there's still a little bit of pessimism between it, but 15th at the moment, getting decent results. Yes, albeit losing out to Burnley, but then backing it up with a good, solid victory against West Ham, who, 2-1 on paper looked probably arguably a bit tighter than it actually was. Leeds United taking 2-goal lead in the first, 20, 25 minutes, and the game was pretty much done and dusted. And after West Ham's recent form, to go in the league after 5 minutes was just a perfect start for the fans just as well as the players.
Yeah, I think from there, I mean, I didn't watch the game. I've read a lot about it, obviously, afterwards. I think from an outsider looking in, it was most important for them to bounce back from the Burnley game. They needed to do something after that game to come back and not lose back to back. Obviously, at home as well, Leeds' home form is going to be, well, any promoted team, your home form is where you need to pick up your more points. I think nobody wants to go to Ellen Road. I saw, was it Nuno Espirito, the West Ham manager, saying that they were talking about the atmosphere at Ellen Road. I think that will be crucial for them for the rest of the season. West Ham not started great, not really improved since Nuno in there either. Them and West Ham and Wolves are banging trouble. I think they'll both. This could be the first year in a while where at least one, if not 2, promoted teams stay up, because Wolves and West Ham look shocking. But we're looking at the table. I think they're averaging over a point a game. Leeds, that should probably just about be enough for them to stay up if they keep that form going for the rest of the season. The last 5, they've won 2, drawn 1, and lost 2. I think you do that over a season, you're more than going to stay up. So I don't think there's anything to worry about with them at the moment. Obviously, the Burnley game was a real blow for them, but they've done the right thing. They've bounced back and won what I would say was almost a must-win for them, given that they were at home and West Ham were struggling. They've done what they needed to do on Friday night.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I watched the game, so to give a bit of thoughts for myself, I think they looked solid. They took the game to West Ham, exactly what they needed to do. Friday night, all that kind of atmosphere at Ellen Road goes along with it, doesn't it? But I think the situation that, as you mentioned, what Leeds found themselves in, and especially West Ham, they needed to start bright, start strong, and really take the game to West Ham, and that's exactly what they did. I think West Ham, to an extent, got a little bit into the game, but 2-0, it's always difficult to come from behind, and obviously, as you mentioned, a few players playing out of position. Callum Wilson coming after 20, 25 minutes, I think, showed where West Ham were, both from a starting 11 perspective, but also what they needed to do to change the game. And we came a little bit back into it, but for me, I never felt that Leeds really got out of 3rd, 4th gear. They could have probably stepped up another one if they really needed. And the consolation goals just unfortunate for Leeds to not keep a clean sheet. But you look at the best of the clubs, like you mentioned, mate, and how it can be a potential struggle for some of those. In Leeds, they've got the next fixture's Brighton away, which is tricky. Forest away, but if Leeds are going to stay up, which, like you mentioned with City, it's still a similar situation for Leeds in the Premier League. You'd be hoping that they might get one of those games where they can potentially get 3 points out of them. Brighton suffered a disappointing defeat at the weekend. So did Forest. So Leeds are going to be looking at this thinking, if we can get 3 points out of 6, it's actually not a bad return, is it?
No, it's not. And I mean, even the game, and they're both away, so that is a bit more of a difficult challenge for them than obviously we've talked about the atmosphere at Ellen Road and the more likely to be winning at home. But they've got Villa after that at home. So even that game is a game that you've got to look at and think, well, at home, it's something we can take points from. I don't think they were totally outclassed against Spurs a few weeks ago. Forest away. Be interesting to see how they react under Sean Dyche. They've not started the season well at all, and obviously that's led to 2 changes in manager already. So another couple of weeks under Dyche, will there be a different proposition? You don't know. Brighton, like you say, turned over at United on Saturday, although United have now won 3 in a row. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. They do probably need to get something out of those, at least one of those 2 away games to set them up, because although, like I said, the Villa game is at home, Villa are flying at the moment as well. So, interesting times, and I think you've just got to judge it on a game-by-game basis with Leeds at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously the stats are going round, and especially Jay and Brown here. There's Leeds United fans that, are banging a drum about certain individuals. I know Aronson's obviously coming into his own as well, but I think one thing you could probably argue, Gaz, for Leeds is that they've got a little bit of depth. They've got a little bit of competition now for places. If you look at the likes of Okafor coming in and making a bit of a difference, Longstaff making a bit of a difference. Like you said, you're taking each game as it comes, but looking outside, looking in, even though there's probably still a job to do in January, recruitment's been solid enough, hasn't it? It's what you expect from a side that is trying to stay in this division and, like you say, fight against the likes of West Ham and your Wolves and the Burnleys and Sunderland are flying at second at the moment, but it's how long can they keep that going? But when you look at them players coming in, they've kind of just fitted in okay, haven't they? And Calvert-Lewin's been leading a line. I'm saying he's touch wood for Leeds fans. He's stayed fit. So they're looking okay, aren't they, without being spectacular?
Yeah, I think so. I know that Brownie and Jay sometimes get a bit hung up about what Sunderland are doing, but just forget about Sunderland. Focus on yourself. Like you said, Sunderland, I can't see that lasting forever. They may be having their good run now and they'll hit a sticky patch at some point. But you compare their team, the Leeds team, to the other teams that are down there. I think it's more than a match for most of those teams that are down there. Yeah, West Ham are underachieving at the moment, and I know that there's a chance that they'll turn it around, but they haven't done as yet, have they? You've got to think there's something not quite right there at the moment. The Leeds, I know we talked about the recruitment, and there's a little bit of worry about whether they'll have the financial capability to do what they want to do in January. I know that Brownie were disappointed that they didn't get some such as Harry Wilson over the line on transfer deadline day. Maybe they do need a little bit of something else. We talked about on the pod last week. Jay was saying they need someone who can create them a few more chances than that at the moment. But Okafor started well. Calvert-Lewin's never going to be a goal scorer, is he? So maybe if you do create chances, you don't want him missing them. So I think maybe a couple of additions in January will probably stand them in good stead, and then they'd be more than favourites to stay up for me if they got those 2 over the line in January.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's again really fair. So just to kind of obviously go on to League One, back in your league, Gaz. We've got to tread carefully, haven't we? Yeah. Huddersfield Town. Where do we start? Right. So I think it's eat, sleep, repeat, mourn, isn't it? With Huddersfield Town. Listen, it's a 3-0 defeat at Wickham, down to 10 men after 25 minutes. Currently 9th in the league. There's a lot of I wouldn't say a lot, but there's a fair amount of disgruntlement about what's happening, on and off the field again. How do you see things at Huddersfield Town at the moment? I mean, I'm kind of opening up the playing field, and it's vast, isn't it? But let's start with on the pitch. 9th in the league, quarter of the season done. Are they where they expected to be, or do you think they could have potentially been higher?
That's the word, isn't it? Expectation. That's the thing with Huddersfield at the moment. They're not achieving what the fans expected them to achieve, and they're not probably achieving what outsiders expected them to achieve, given the recruitment that they had in the summer. I was looking at the results. I think they're 1 win in 6 in the league. That's a problem for any team. I mean, they're talking about Liverpool have lost 4 on the bounce. That's a problem for any team. But when you're expected to be doing well and you lose 4 on the bounce and you win 1 in 6, then it becomes a real problem, and the negative voices become louder. And I stay out of it a lot in the group chat because I know Downsy gets ribbed and there's lots of different opinions flying around. And I don't want to get too involved because obviously Huddersfield have been our rivals down the years and it'll come back and bite me at some point. But I think there's a real problem there. I really do. I think I think they do have to stick with the manager at some point, but I question whether Grant is that manager that they should be looking at sticking with. Just given his inexperience, really. If you had a manager in charge that had something to fall back on, and you can say, well, he's come through these spells before, or he's worked with this kind of environment before under pressure, then you'd probably be more likely to stick with him. The problem is who they're going to get in if they do go down the road of getting rid of Lee Grant. The money they've spent also, that's his squad, because they've no director of football in there at the moment. So he has built that squad, and whoever comes in would have to work with these players. And Nagel obviously has gone through quite a lot of managers already. He's gone down the route of the young up and coming coach right now. That's something new to try. He's tried the managers with a little bit more experience in Darren Moore and Michael Duff. I think they should have stuck with Duff. I know Downsy does as well. I think that was the manager to stick with. I think they should have given him at least the rest of the season and given him a look into this season with his own players, because it was always going to be the case at Town that the manager this summer just gone was going to be able to overhaul the squad more than they've been able to before. And I always think that Duff was probably the man to let do that. He started well at Wickham. Obviously, that is a problem for Town, because they look at what he was doing at Town and they look at what he's gone in and done at Wickham. He's had a reasonably enough or decent enough start down there, and it was always going to be a problem to go down there, play against him and lose 3-0. They didn't help themselves. Obviously, Alfie May gets sent off in the first half. That puts you up against it straight away. So they're not helping themselves at the moment, and it's just a real problem. They need a win from somewhere. Whether that win is coming anytime soon, I don't know. The worries about the fans are worried about the players repeating the issues of sort of disengaging, switching off like they said they have done before, and sort of chucking the towel in. And that would be a real problem if that was to happen now, because it's a relatively new group of players compared to what it's been before. And there's some experienced players in there. And I just think they really need to knuckle down these experienced pros that have been there and had success before. And show what they're capable of, because you can't put it all on the manager. They need to show a little bit of fight in these games. Whether Alfie May was doing that on Saturday, we're going about it the wrong way if he did, because it's a horror tackle in it and he deserves to be sent off. But yeah, I can understand the arguments. I do think that long term, if things don't improve quickly now, that Grant will be replaced, and probably rightly so, because he's probably not the right man to stick with. But in the short term, the players need to show a bit of backbone and fight for him and fight for the club, because 1 win in 6, when you've come in with the reputations and the money that they have, is not good enough.
Yeah, no, I think you make some really valid points there, mate. And for those who are of a Huddersfield Town persuasion, again, check out our social media channels. I know that Kane, Stephen and Callum had a really healthy debate. I actually listened to it this morning going into work, and it was a really, really good show of, and a lively conversation, shall we say, of their thoughts on Huddersfield Town at the moment. So do go check that one out. Just kind of going down through the leagues, guys, before obviously wrap up into non-league. Halifax Town drawing 1-1 in a midday kick-off against York City. You know, Shea kind of bouncing at this time at the moment, doing really solid work at the moment after what has been a disappointing start to the season. But, you know, York, who, you know, been splashing the cash in the past couple of years, go to the Shea and, you know, pick up a 1-1 draw there. It's not a bad result, is it, for Halifax? If, you know, it's just one of those that just keeps them ticking along, really.
Yeah, I'm going to comment on Fax and Park Avenue, like we said before, Lou, and then I kind of like run out of things to say about non-league. But I do look at Fax, and that'll be over to you then, mate, with the others. But
go for it.
With Fax, I think they'd won 6 in a row up until a couple of weeks ago, and we were all raving about them, and we're all saying now we need to get Dave back on the pod as soon as possible so he can enjoy what is a really good run of form. And then they went to, was it Truro? I think they went to Truro and they got beat, which was a bit of a shocker for them. Not a result that they'd have probably been expecting, given the run of form and where Truro were in the league. But then obviously they would want to bounce back on Saturday, and they didn't quite do that. But it's a bit like City. On the face of it, you look at the York game in isolation, and is it a terrible result, a draw against York? I don't think it is, given where York's expectations are and the money they've spent, and where they have a nice little break for the Cup on Saturday. They've got Exeter, I think, in the Cup. So, yeah. see how they go in that, and then look to bounce back with a win in the league in the next league game for me.
Yeah, I think from their perspective at the moment, and I've said this, in recent shows that I've been able to join, is that, they've had to build a brand new squad, brand new manager. I'm saying this because it feels quite similar to Huddersfield Town, really. But, they've had a bit of a slow start to the season, but eventually got going. And, you look at that squad that York City have put together. It's, there's some absolute quality in there. And Halifax have held their own. They've picked up a fair few from National League North and, got some gems in there. And, they just do what Halifax do, don't they? We say it every year and it sounds like a broken record. And even though we're nowhere near the end of the season, 16 games played, 2 points outside the playoffs after losing, I think, the first 4 or 5. It's not a bad return. So, and you look at some of those clubs, I mean, Gaz, as well as me, that some of those clubs up there, like Rochdale leading the division, Scunthorpe have, got the backing, which is what they've desperately needed over the past few years. Carlisle have splashed the cash big time. Forest Green, Southend, York in there, Hartlepool. So they're mixing it with the bigger boys now in the National League. And I think that was the concern for some of the Halifax Town fans, that they weren't going to do that after Millington and Cooper left. But they seem to be doing that at the moment.
Yeah, that's the key for me. I was a little bit wondering how they'd get on when Millington left, because obviously he'd done such a great job and he'd been there for quite a long time, and the change of manager was always going to be a big thing. And then obviously the way they started, you kind of worried a little bit more. But the kind of like where they are now is where they were for a long time under Millington, just knocking on the door of the playoffs. Might make it, might not. So to say that they've gone through the change of manager and still managed to maintain that is a decent enough start. You mentioned the teams there. I mean, the only team, I'm just looking, Halifax at 8th. But the only team who would say is performing above expectations at the moment, other than them, are Boreham Wood, because Rochdale, Scunthorpe, Carlisle, Forest Green, Southend, York have all got big budgets for that level. So I think they can be really happy with the way they are in the league. Like I say, I think there were 6 straight wins up until a couple of weeks ago. It's a little bit disappointing that they've lost that run. Obviously, they lost at Truro and then they've drawn at York. But nice little break for the Cup. Try and get back to winning ways in the league. Will it be I think it'll be a week on Saturday, won't it, for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those FA Cup games that, I mean, you guys at Bradford City went there how many years ago now? But it feels like that could be a classic FA Cup tie down there against the Exeter side. It's not a nicest trip, is it, to go from Exeter all the way to up there? But in League One, where are Exeter at the moment in League One? Kind of 18th, just hovering above the relegation zone. So it feels, doesn't it, that little sprinkling of magic in the FA Cup might just happen there in West Yorkshire.
Yeah, I'm going to say, I was just trying to check that, but you might have already done it. Are they at home, Halifax?
Halifax at home, yeah.
It's at the Shea, is it?
Yeah.
Massive opportunity for them if they're at home, considering the way the form has been up until obviously a couple of weeks ago, considering where Exeter are in the league. It's not somewhere that Exeter will be looking forward to going to, put it that way. I know they had a good result in the Devon Derby against Plymouth. So obviously they're going to be high from that. But again, is it going to be a game where the ecstasy is a priority? Are they going to prioritise the cup where they are in the league? Lots of unknowns going into Saturday, but I think Halifax can look at that game as probably winnable. Really, they're probably looking at it thinking it's not out of the realms of possibility that we win that game, considering the form of the two teams.
Yeah, I think you're right, mate. I think you're right. Well, I'll help us all out. We'll go through some of the non-league stuff, shall we?
Yeah, you take it away, Lou. You take it away.
You take a breather, mate. You've done a load of talking tonight. Amazing. As always, Gaz does all the prep, does all the knowledge. Absolutely amazing stuff. So cheers, Gaz. So, yeah, to kind of wrap up a little bit of the non-league stuff before we end for the evening. Guiseley. So, first of all, Guiseley. MPL Prem side, who were expected to do really well, had ex-Bradford City man, Matt Bauer in charge, as we know, but have struggled in recent weeks. And some of you are probably aware from watching shows that the party company with Bauer and Boschel a few weeks ago, they've had Liam Rydell, who again is familiar player in across these quarters of Huddersfield and Bradford City as well. He's in temporary charge, but it was majority of the conversations in and around the non-league is, can you stick a good run in the FA Trophy, because it means something the further you go into the competition, because we're a couple of rounds away from getting some of the big boys now. The National League North teams have started to come into it in the most recent draw, which has happened this afternoon. But unfortunately, Guiseley have struggled again this week. So suffering a 2-1 defeat at Prescott Cables, and I was actually listening to the interview last night and actually seeing some of the fan reaction, and they're not too pleased about what's happening down there at Guiseley with the way they're playing, but also I think the results as well, which is having a real adverse effect. And you look at Guiseley, I mean, we've said it for a number of years that they've been expected to be up there or thereabouts. Last year they got in the playoff semis, but are really down towards the bottom end of this division at the moment.
I mean, just for me, Luke, just looking at like from the outside, where I've seen Guiseley be before, like I say, I'm no expert on league, but they've got to be looking to get out of that division, haven't they? They've got to be looking as one of the favourites. I mean, you'll know more than me what the squad's like compared to other teams, but I think I've just been looking at the results. I think they've lost 4 on the bounce. That'll be including the games that obviously Liam Rydalsh has taken since he's been in charge. But whoever comes in has got a big job on there, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they have. I think, listen, they've just had a bit of a reshuffle in the boardroom as well. So, and I think they just need to make a really good, solid appointment, and I've got to stick with them. I've said this for a few years, is that Guiseley have, again, I'm kind of harking on a little bit back to Huddersfield Town because I know people might know my thoughts about Lee Grant. I think he needs to stick for a little bit longer, but the prime example at Guiseley at the moment is that they've not really stuck with a manager for a long enough time to get a reasonable amount of success. And, from being in the National League, 10 years ago, so to speak, they've drifted down the divisions. And, in recent years, they've just swapped and changed managers without any kind of stability. And unfortunately, it seems to be coming to a little bit of a crescendo where it's just not going how it should be at Guiseley because they're a really good club. But they've had too many managers in recent years, have not stuck it out with good people there in charge, and then they've obviously gone back to Brown and Boschel. And this isn't a slight on them whatsoever, but I'm always a little bit wary when you start going back to people that you've had in previous times where when you don't want to taint what they've done before, but it's very, very different. But the expectations are there to get guys to back up through the leagues, and it's just a completely different situation of who you're playing, your players and everything. So I think I agree, guys. I think it's a big, big job for somebody to take on. And there's still a possibility to have an half-decent season, but looking at it at the moment, the absolute purpose now is to stay in that division. I mean, if guys go down, that is a real, real big blow, not just for them, but I think for the region as well. I think it'd be a massive blow, and it would surprise a lot of people, but they've got to stay in that division. Would I see Rydalsh potentially getting it? I don't know. He's not had a great start, has he, when you look at it on paper, but it depends what route they want to go down. For me, they do need a really good, solid pair of hands just to see him through, I think, at the moment. But Venner's got potential to stay there for at least 2-3 years, but it's whether that person's going to have the opportunity to do it. So they've got a big time coming up at Guiseley. It feels like it's a bit of a turning point, I think, in who they appoint next. I think, obviously, they know Bauer and Bosch were free last time and they knew what they were capable of doing, but that squad is decent enough to do okay in this division. Did I think it was strong enough to go up? I'll be honest, it wasn't, in my opinion. But they had a lot of fresh, young players who were hungry and have got a point to prove. A couple from a division below, a couple of youngsters who've been released from higher clubs. But it seemed to be where there were players that obviously Baron Bosch have known really well in years gone by, and sometimes you can argue that pool of players is wearing a little bit thinner now just because time goes on, doesn't it? So, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens down at Nevermore, and we'll keep up to speed with that one. So, but yeah, I think it's a real one to watch out for guys, because I think, like you say, if they get anywhere near the relegation zone, that's a real battle. It's a real battle.
It really is. It's like you say, that's probably why they need a steady pair of hands, maybe someone with a bit of experience. If Liam Rydalsh had started really well and, say, won the couple of games, then it might be different. But just where the form is at the moment, just as an outsider looking in, I'm with you, Lou. They need someone who's got a safe pair of hands, who's probably, just like me said, make sure they stay up, because they just don't want to go down again.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of run through some of the rest of the FA trophies. So Bradford Park Avenue won on penalties against Morpeth, who are just below pretty much Guiseley in the MPL Prem. So that was, I can't remember the first time or the last time, Avenue have beaten a division higher team, so to speak. It's been a long, long time. But it was an odd game, a game of two halves. I mean, obviously the interviews kind of say what it from both sets of managers, and I don't really disagree with them. Horsefall definitely has its own climate, and the wind was really, really temperamental, especially in the first half. had a big adverse effect, I think, on Morpeth. It was one of those where you kick it up in the air and it's just holding up. It's not going to go far. It's classic stuff. But Avenue played the conditions well, and they were probably arguably disappointed to go in even 1-0 up. And I know that's really a crazy thing to say against, a team who are higher than you in the pyramid, but, they had chances to get a couple in the back of the net. But listen, Morpeth had a really good second half. It came out a completely different animal. It's one of those where you've seen it, Gaz, in many games you've watched, but when you watch a team in the first half, albeit against difficult conditions, to come out second half and they look like a brand new team, like one that didn't even play the first half. They came out and showed a lot of decent quality, in my opinion, a lot of intent, and really stuck it at Avenue. And I'd argue they were probably unfortunate not to sneak a win. And I know that sounds really harsh against Avenue because they had a glorious chance in the second half to win it properly with 2 goals. But, they missed a gilt-edged chance in a minute after half-time. They scored a wonderfully well-worked move, but then Jack Hall, the Avenue keeper, made an unbelievable save in the last minute to keep Avenue going into that penalty shootout. And penalties came, and Avenue, for whatever reason, just seemed to have a really good knack of doing it. They seemed really confident stepping up. I called it in commentary, and I don't know about you guys, your thoughts, and this is nothing against people with, who are favouring the left foot, but left footers taking penalties make me squirm. I don't know what it is. It is, but I always get a little bit wary. I don't know if it's got a PTSD from Pierce and Waddle, but I get a little bit worried. I'm always a bit like, ever going to win it, ever going to miss it? And I called it in commentary when one of our lads, Charlie Winfield, has been exceptional this season. It's been unbelievable. And I called it and I went, it's a left footer taking a penalty, and he missed it. I'm like, I've said it. I don't know what it is.
Thought of it, Lou. I've never really thought of it. Is it something that you've noticed for a while, that? Because I don't know what it is. Never ever thought that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. And then, ironically, our player next stepped up left-footed and scored, so that kind of buried any kind of conspiracy theory out the water. But yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. Like, I love watching left-footed players. I love them. Like, some of the greatest down the years have been left-footed. But when I take a penalty, I just get a little bit anxious. I'm just not as confident when a left-footed compared to right-footed. I don't know what it is. I think it might be the 1990s, me and your era, mate, where I just get a little bit of bit of flashbacks, unfortunately. But yeah, I don't know what it is, mate. So, but yeah, get your comments in if you think I'm talking BS, basically. I probably am on that one.
It's a big win, though, I think, for having that, mate. I mean, I know you're doing well league. Third now, you're up near the top, aren't you? Red Car are running away with it, aren't they? But to go to play against a team who are higher in a higher division and turn them over, it's a feather in the cap for any team, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a marker for Avenue in terms of that's where we need to be next year or the season after at the very least. But it felt like a good opportunity to pit ourselves against who Avenue hope we're going to be playing against next season. There's still a long way to go. I still think we're a couple of players short of where we need to be to really challenge for promotion, and that's no slight on the players that we've got. But Morpeth looked okay, but we matched them. Which was an encouraging sign. You look at Red Card, who were just scoring goals for fun. Like, they're so prolific, it's scary. They're scoring 3-4 goals week in, week out. They hit Silsden for 10 the other week. Matlock have, got some phenomenal players who are arguably National League North standard. And, despite not the greatest start to the season, but they've just plugged away and been steady and are up there and will be up there at the end of the season. It feels like at the moment that the top 3 probably are going to stick in around that top 3, barring, 1 or 2 maybe coming through. But I just look at the squads in around that division and I think they're the 3 standouts at the moment. And the table, for me, at the moment, doesn't lie in that respect.
How many go up, Lou?
1 and then plus some of playoffs.
Right, so yeah, okay. So it's 1 automatic and then, okay.
So one team out of them 3 is going to be massively disappointed. And that's when I think Avenue have got a little bit of work to do. And I would argue this. I still think Avenue have arguably got the best defence in the league. You look at the quality of players. Anybody in that division would have Luke Hendry, who's been just a class act since joining from Morecambe. Just a class act.
I wanted to ask you about him. I wanted to ask you how he'd been doing. Is he showing his class?
Yeah, he is. He's just a really good, solid pro, isn't he? And you can see those players who sometimes take the step down and it's a bit of a busman's holiday, but he just oozes class when it's needed. You know, he probably had an arguably first couple of games where it's a little bit tricky, but that's bound to happen, I think, when you're joining any team and getting used to it again. But he's been a class act. He got man of the match on Saturday. He scored a winning penalty. He were playing right back, centre back, all positions you needed. He were there. So you'd have him. I think any club would have him. There's Jamila Bill as well, who's been makeshift captain when Matt Beavers hasn't been available. You know, he was guys a captain last year. Anybody would have him. Matt Beavers is just a Rolls Royce for me in that division. We've said it for how many times, but he's capable of playing at high level. And Charlie Winfield playing at left back, who's been exceptional, scored 3 goals from left back. And that's not even saying that Josh Ashman, who's been, kind of covering, and Dan Francis, who's been out and had an arm operation. So that defence is arguably strongest in the league. It's just, I think, when you look at Redcar scoring goals for fun, that's where Avenue just a little bit lacking at the moment. But listen, it's a good headache to have. I know Craig Elliott is really happy with the players he's got. And it's just one that it's encouraging to see the team from our region just kind of flying a flag, because there's only 2 teams from the MPL East getting into the next round of the FA Trophy. And we've drawn Radcliffe away, who were managed by the infamous Bernard Morley and Anthony Johnson, who were at Salford. So it's a good test for Avenue. And Radcliffe are 3rd in the National League North. So it's a good opportunity to pit yourselves against some really good quality players who have been there, really seasoned professionals. Lois Maynard, who many might know from Halifax. Anthony Dudley's been at Guiseley. Jordan Hume, the list goes on. George Glendon, etc. So they've got a really, really good squad. I think David Ball, Dan Gardner from years gone by at Halifax as well. So good test. It might be one step a little bit too far for Avenue, but I know the lads will be going there with plenty of confidence and nothing to lose. And they've already pocketed about 9-10 grand out of the competition, so it all helps really as well.
And it must be good as a supporter of Avenue, Lou, to see him up at the right end of the league and challenging where you want to be. After the last couple of years that you've had, where hopefully you dropped down a couple of divisions and then not done what supporters hoped or wanted you to do. So to actually be having a season where you're challenging to get promoted and be at the right end, it's got to be nice for you.
Yeah, I think so, and I think people got to be realistic of where we are as well, and it's been a bit of pill to swallow over recent years of what's been happening. And there's no pleasing everyone. Is really about what you do, and even when we're on an unbeaten run, people still were having a bit of a moan, and like you normally do with any kind of football club, don't you? But I think it's difficult because to go in any kind of unbeaten run of 10, 11 games in any divisions, you've got to be half decent to do that. Sometimes the style of football is not the greatest, but then you've got to sometimes play the level. You've just got to adapt yourself. It's difficult to say. You can't really out-football a lot of teams in that division. You can try, but sometimes you've just got to match up to them and be better than physically stronger and just take your chances, because it can be ugly. You watch some games, and I'll be honest, I've seen a fair few this season. It's not a great watch at all, but you've just got to come out and be clinical. But we've got players in there who would, could mix it in a division above. They've played with each other quite consistently, and knowing what Craig is a winner, and that's always a good person to have at the helm. Dugout who knows how to win. You've got experienced pros alongside him, like Danny Ellis, Ryan Tolson, who've been there and done it and are local and know exactly what it takes to get out of that division. So yeah, it's encouraging. Listen, I know there's an Avenue fans don't get carried away, trust me, mate, and you know that as well. But it's one that it's encouraging. It's a good problem to have. But hopefully Craig just gets backed with a little bit of extra fundage, if I'm being brutally honest, to get a couple in and really, really challenging like Redcar and Matlock, because they're doing well like us. And I think when you're watching the quality of the opposition in the league, Avenue are close, and I mean that politely. We're very close to being title contenders, and when you're that close, you start smelling it, don't you?
Yeah.
Like any club does, and you've just got to not. Crikey, you don't want to break the club at all, but when you're that close and you stand a chance, it's, can the manager and the players be back to really give it a go, because they're capable of doing it. And the worry is that it goes the opposite way. Yeah, so be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, to touch on some of the other stuff in the national, in the MPL East, because obviously there's been a lot of action across the weekend. So Ossett picked up a really encouraging win away at Blythe 2-1. Emily suffered a little bit of a disappointing defeat at home to Bishop Auckland 2-0, as did Garth against Eton Stannington. So the North East team's coming out top there. Brighouse really going well at the moment under Grant Black and Danny Forrest, winning 4-1 at Hallam, which is a remarkable result, and we're just doing some really good stuff down there at Brighouse. And them two guys know him well, just are crazy in the most politest way, but we're doing a really good job down there. And a shout out as well for Pontycall. So Pontycall's returned back home to their home ground after sharing with Ossett. They've had the new 4G pitch down, the stadium kind of rebuilt a little bit again to factor in the pitch and all the facilities that go along with it. And albeit they didn't win, I think we got about 500 there on Saturday, which is a really good return for Ponty. Some great people down there, and they've signed some really decent players in recent weeks. So it's good to see them back at home, and it's going to be a moneymaker. So I think Ponty could be quite strong in the next few years. And just to kind of touch on some other standout results in the NCL Prem. So Campion drew 3-3 with Penistone. Eccleshill just doing really well at the moment. I think surprising a few people down there at Cougar Park. And even though the attendances haven't massively gone up, they've been reasonably solid in that division. Fackley with a really good win away at Handsworth. But Liversidge is still, kind of leading away top of the table by 4 points, which is a really good thing from our region. And in the division below, some good results for teams in West Yorkshire. Wakefield winning, Leeds USCA winning, Ilkley winning 2-0 against Selby. And a shout out again for Route 1 Rovers. And I don't know if the guys may have mentioned this before, but there's a chap at Route 1 Rovers down at Marishare called Zach Khan, who has scored 33 goals already this season. And which you go, oh, well, that sounds, a lot. It is a lot when they've only played 17 games. Yeah. The goal difference is 22 already, and he's scored, like I said, all of them so far. So he's one to keep an eye on, and he's wanting to break records. And I know he was reported in the local press as well recently. So he's getting a bit of attention, I think. But yeah, 33 goals in all competitions is quite stunning, really. But yeah, that kind of wraps up where we are non-league. It's been mixed, but it's one where it just needs... We need a few more teams just to kind of up the game a little bit to be as strong as what we have been in recent years. Because them lot from the northeast, I'm saying that with a wry smile because it's my second home, are not doing too bad at the moment.
Blythe and Spennymoor.
Well, to be fair, Blythe are struggling at the moment in the NPL East. You look at, without getting into too much of it, you wouldn't have had both Blythe teams playing in the same division, but both of them in the bottom four at the moment. Blythe are 20th out of 22nd, and Blythe Town are rock bottom at the moment. So, but you look at other teams in there, like in the weekend, which were mentioned, like Heaton Stannington winning, Concert winning. There's a couple of teams, unfortunately, from our region, Brighouse, Silsden, are just beneath them, Gartha. So we need to up our game. We need to beat them Geordies, don't we, somehow? I'm saying that in the West Yorkshire Football Show, being a Newcastle fan. So, but yeah, I think that kind of wraps everything up, mate. Is anything else from yourself, dude, before we enjoy the rest of our evening?
I don't think so. No, I'm content, mate, as long as we don't lose tomorrow night.
Absolutely, mate. And we'll either be wiping Chris's tears away, or we'll be celebrating with a pint after the game with you, mate, whichever one. But let's hope from a West Yorkshire perspective it goes in the favour of Bradford City, because all I'm saying is if Lincoln win, we probably won't hear the end of it, will we, mate?
No, we don't want a bragging Chris, do we?
No, because if he does, then he's getting blocked from the rest of us all. So with that, we'll enjoy the rest of the evening. Thanks, everybody who's tuned in. As always, do catch us on replay through Facebook, YouTube, and X. It's been a pleasure being joined by yourself, guys. Always good to see you, dude.
Yeah, we rocked it again, didn't we, Lou?
Absolutely, mate. We've gone a little bit over the half an hour, but we're allowed. We're allowed to pass out in this one. But yeah, thanks everyone who's joined us. Do catch us. Do spread the word about West Yorkshire Football Show. I know the lads will be doing plenty of shows coming up. Huddersfield Town. Gaz does his usual Bradford City videos. Leeds United coming up, etc. So we'll be sharing everything through our social media channel. So keep it tuned in there. But with that, we will leave you for the rest of the evening. Thanks very much, everyone.